The chamber was larger than any building on Earth. Ambassador Victor Kane stood at its center, alone on a platform barely wide enough for two men to stand. Above him, rising in endless tiers that disappeared into darkness, sat the representatives of 1,000 alien civilizations. The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 3 million years. They had watched species rise and fall like waves upon a cosmic shore. They had built empires that spanned entire galaxy clusters. And today, they had gathered to judge humanity. Victor did not move. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and steady hands that had signed treaties with 17 alien governments. He had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. Now that it had arrived, he felt strangely calm. The chamber fell silent as a massive creature descended from the highest tier. High Chancellor Morvith of the Valdrani Dominion was 15 feet tall, with scales that shifted between purple and gold. His eyes, each larger than Victor's head, fixed upon the human with cold curiosity. Species designation 479, Morvith announced. Locally known as humanity. Origin world. Third planet of the Sol system. You stand before this council, accused of violations against the Galactic Compact. Victor inclined his head slightly. May I know the specific charges, High Chancellor? A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. Most species facing judgment fell to their knees or begged for mercy. This small creature, standing barely 6 feet tall, spoke as if addressing an equal. You expanded beyond your permitted boundaries, Morvith continued. You colonized 19 worlds without authorization. You developed military technology that exceeds your species classification. And you refused to submit biological samples for the genetic registry. We colonized worlds that had been abandoned for 500,000 years, Victor replied. Worlds that no council species had claimed or used. We developed weapons only after the Thurvan Collective attacked our colony on New Geneva, killing 40,000 civilians. And our genetic information belongs to us. The Thurvan delegation insect-like beings with gleaming black shells clicked their mandibles in anger. Their ambassador, a creature named Krillax, rose from his seat. You dare blame us for defending council space from human contamination? Your species breeds like parasites. You spread across worlds like disease. We did what was necessary. Victor turned to face the insectoid ambassador. He did not raise his voice. He did not show fear. He simply spoke the truth. You murdered children, Ambassador Krillax, families, people who had never raised a weapon against anyone. And the council gave you permission to do it. Silence crashed through the chamber. No species had ever spoken to a council member this way. Not in 3 million years. High Chancellor Morvith raised one massive limb. Enough. The council has deliberated. We have reviewed humanity's expansion, your technology, your biology, and your refusal to comply with integration protocols. He paused, and Victor felt the weight of 8 billion lives pressing against his chest. The verdict is unanimous. A holographic display appeared above Victor's head. Earth rotated slowly, beautiful and blue. Then a red circle enclosed it, a symbol of exile. Humanity is hereby expelled from the galactic community. All treaties are void. All trade agreements canceled. You are forbidden from leaving the Sol system. Any human vessel found beyond your borders will be destroyed without warning. Victor stood perfectly still as the words washed over him. He thought of his wife in the lunar colonies, his son on Mars, the billions of humans who had hoped that today would bring acceptance. Not rejection, but then he did something that confused every being in that ancient chamber. He smiled. High Chancellor, Victor said, I have a message from Earth. Our government asked me to deliver it only if the verdict went against us. Morvith hesitated. In his 500 years of service, no species had ever responded to exile with anything except despair. Speak, he commanded. Victor reached into his coat and removed a small device. He activated it, and a voice filled the chamber. It belonged to Director Helena Vasquez, the leader of United Earth. To the Galactic Council, the recording began. We accept your verdict. We will withdraw to our borders. We will not trouble you again. But remember this day. Remember that you chose to cast us out rather than stand with us. Because one day, sooner than you imagine, you will need humanity. And when that day comes, you will have to answer one question. The recording paused. When Helena spoke again, her voice was cold as space itself. Did you exile us because we were weak? Or because you were afraid of what we might become? The device went dark. Victor turned and walked toward the chamber's exit. Not one of the 1,000 species tried to stop him. They simply watched, uncertain for the first time in millennia. As the doors closed behind him. High Chancellor Morvith looked up at the highest tier where the elders sat, being so ancient they had witnessed the birth of galaxies. One of them, a creature of living shadow called the Warden, leaned forward and spoke words that would haunt the council for centuries. We have made a terrible mistake. Victor returned to Earth aboard the diplomatic vessel Horizon. He delivered his report to Director Vasquez in person, standing before her desk in the Unity building. They gave us no chance, Victor said. The verdict was decided before I arrived. This was always a performance, not a trial. Helena nodded slowly. She was 68 years old, with silver hair and eyes that had survived 3 assassination attempts. Then we proceed with Protocol Omega. Victor blinked. You were serious about that? I have been preparing for this moment for 20 years, Victor. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. The Prometheus Protocol begins tonight. We evacuate our outer colonies, consolidate our forces, and begin building. Building what? Helena turned to face him. Everything. Ships, weapons, technology the Council cannot imagine. We have resources they do not know about. Scientists they never catalogued. And most importantly, she smiled, we have time. They think exile is a punishment. They think we will wither and die in our little corner of space. She pressed a button on her desk. Holographic displays filled the room. Plans for orbital shipyards, terraforming projects, research stations that would transform humanity's understanding of physics. We will show them what humans can build when no one is watching. 3 days later, the evacuation of the outer colonies began. 17 worlds emptied as humans returned to the Sol system. They brought everything they could carry: technology, resources, knowledge gathered from a decade among the stars. And watching from the shadows of council space, the being known as the Warden observed it all. He had lived for 4 billion years. He had seen 10,000 species rise and fall. And something about these humans troubled him in ways he could not name. They did not weep as they fled. They did not curse their fate. They organized. They planned. They looked toward the future with eyes full of terrible purpose. What are you? The Warden whispered into the void. What will you become? In the Sol system, humanity began to disappear behind a barrier of silence. No transmissions escaped. No ships departed. For 10 long years, the galaxy would hear nothing from the exiled species. But they were not dying. They were not fading. They were transforming. And when they emerged, the universe would never be the same. 5 years after the exile, a Valdrani scout ship approached the Sol system. Captain Torval had been ordered to observe humanity's decline. The Council expected to find a broken species, huddled around their dying sun, waiting for extinction. Instead, he found the impossible. The Sol barrier appeared on his sensors first as static, then as something his instruments could not process. It was a sphere of energy, 40 astronomical units in diameter, encasing the entire human solar system. Torval ran every scan in his database. Nothing penetrated the barrier. Nothing could even identify what it was made of. Analysis, he demanded. His science officer, a young Valdrani named Sereth, trembled as she studied the readings. Captain, the barrier exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It is not simply energy. It appears to be ... alive. That is impossible. No species can create biological technology on this scale. The readings do not lie, Captain. The humans have built something we cannot understand. Torval retreated immediately. His report reached High Chancellor Mordeth within hours, and for the first time in centuries, the Council felt something close to fear. Inside the barrier, humanity had become something new. Admiral Thomas Okonkwo stood on the observation deck of the shipyard orbiting Mars. He was 73 years old now, his dark skin weathered by decades of military service. Behind him, through reinforced glass, stretched a fleet larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. 10 million ships, each one small, no larger than a ground vehicle. But together, they moved as one entity, controlled by a distributed artificial intelligence that thought faster than any organic mind. "The swarm fleet is ready, Director," Thomas reported through his comm. Mu Nicator. On Earth, Director Helena Vasquez received his message. She was 73 now, still sharp, still determined. The Prometheus protocol had succeeded beyond her wildest hopes. "Show me," she said. A holographic display activated before her, showing the solar system in perfect detail. Earth had been transformed, pollution eliminated, cities rebuilt, orbital rings circling the planet like silver necklaces. Mars was no longer red. Terraforming had turned it green and blue, with oceans that sparkled under the distant sun. The asteroid belt had become a manufacturing center that could produce 1,000 ships per day. Jupiter's moons housed research facilities where scientists pushed the boundaries of physics. And Saturn's rings had been converted into the largest sensor array in existence, capable of detecting ships across half the galaxy. Helena smiled. "And the special project?" Thomas hesitated. "Dr. Amara says it will be ready within the year." "But, Director, the implications are enormous. If this works, we will not simply match Council technology. We will surpass it entirely." "Good. Continue production. And keep the barriers sealed. Let them wonder." In the research station orbiting Europa, Dr. Nadia Amara worked on humanity's greatest secret. She was 52 years old, with the tired eyes of someone who had not slept properly in years. Her team surrounded her, the brightest minds humanity had produced, all working toward a single goal: the conversion virus. It was not designed to kill. Humanity had decided long ago that they would not become the monsters the Council had named them. Instead, the virus was designed to transform. It could rewrite the programming of any machine intelligence, changing its core directives from destruction to protection. "The simulations are complete," Nadia announced to her team. "We can convert mechanical entities on a scale previously thought impossible. But we need a delivery system." Her assistant, a young engineer named Marcus, frowned. "The Council has no significant machine fleets. What are we preparing for?" Nadia looked at him with ancient knowledge in her eyes. "Not the Council, Marcus. Something worse. Something that is coming." She pulled up a display showing data collected from beyond the barrier. Deep space sensors had detected something moving through the galaxy's outer region's eye. Wave of machines consuming everything in their path. We call it the Devourer Tide. It appeared 3 years ago in the Perseus. Arm. It has already consumed 47 worlds. And it is heading toward Council space. Marcus went pale. Does the Council know? They will. Soon enough. And when they do, they will have nowhere to turn. The galaxy learned about the Devourer Tide 6 months later. The Thurvan Collective was the first to face it, the same species that had massacred humanity's colony on New Geneva. Their massive hive fleets, which had terrorized dozens of species for millennia, were destroyed in a single day. High Chancellor Morvith convened an emergency session. The great chamber, once filled with 1,000 delegations, now held barely half that number. Species had fled, hidden, or been consumed. The devourer tide cannot be stopped, Morvith announced. Our weapons have no effect. Our shields cannot withstand their assault. At its current rate of expansion, it will reach the core worlds within 15 years. Ambassador Krillax, the Thurvan who had once mocked humanity, was among those present. His species had been reduced to 3 remaining hive worlds. His voice, once arrogant, now trembled. What about the humans? They developed weapons that concerned the Council. Perhaps they have something that could help. Morvith's scales shifted to a deep purple, a sign of shame among his kind. The humans are behind a barrier we cannot penetrate. We exiled them. We gave the Thurvans permission to attack their colonies. Why would they help us? Because if the tide reaches Sol, they die too. The warden, watching from the highest tier, finally spoke. His voice was darkness given sound. The tide will not simply arrive at Sol. It will be directed there. I have studied its patterns. Something is controlling these machines. Something ancient. Something that fears what humanity might become. Morvith looked up at the elder in confusion. What could possibly control a force like the devourer tide? The warden did not answer. He simply faded into shadow, leaving the council to their terror. Inside the barrier, humanity had already detected the tide, their sensors, far more advanced than anything the council possessed, had tracked its movements for years. Director Vasquez, now nearing the end of her time, called a meeting of Iteran Commonwealth's governing council. 7 individuals, chosen for wisdom rather than politics, gathered in the Unity building. The tide will reach council space within a decade, Helena reported. It will consume everything in its path. Then it will turn toward us. Admiral Okonkwo studied the tactical display. We can defend Sol. The swarm fleet and the barrier will hold. Defense is not enough, Helena replied. We did not spend 10 years building an empire just to hide behind walls. When the council comes begging for help, and they will come, we will be ready. The youngest member of the council, a 32-year-old strategist named Diana Okonkwo, Thomas's granddaughter, leaned forward. What do we want from them? Helena smiled a cold expression that held no warmth. Everything: recognition, equality, a seat at the table, and a full acknowledgement of what they did to us. She paused. But most importantly, we want the galaxy to see that humanity saved them. Not despite being exiled, but because of it. They made us what we are. Let them live with that knowledge. The council voted. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would wait. They would watch. And when the galaxy burned, they would emerge from the darkness to save what remained. But somewhere in the void between stars, the being known as the Warden watched and planned. He had seen what humanity was building. He understood their potential. And he had decided that such potential could not be allowed to exist. If the Council would not destroy humanity, then the Devourer tide would. All it needed was proper guidance. 10 years after the exile, the Galactic Council sent its desperate message towards Sol. High Chancellor Morvith himself led the diplomatic mission, a journey he had never imagined making. He had once stood in judgment over humanity. Now he traveled to beg for their mercy. The voyage took 3 weeks. When his vessel finally reached the Sol barrier, Morvith transmitted on every frequency known to galactic civilization. For 6 days, there was no response. His crew began to whisper that the humans had already died, consumed by isolation and despair. Then, On the seventh day, the barrier opened. A perfect circle appeared in the energy wall, just large enough for Morvith's ship to pass through. He ordered his pilot forward, and they entered the human domain. What they found made Morvith question everything he knew about the species he had. Exiled. Earth was unrecognizable. Cities floated among the clouds, connected by bridges of light that pulsed with energy. Orbital rings circled the planet, each one larger than the greatest Valdrani space stations. The oceans sparkled with impossible clarity, and forests covered continents that had once been deserts. Mars was no longer the dead rock Morvith remembered from council records. It was alive blue oceans, green continents, white clouds drifting across its surface. The transformation should have taken millennia. Humanity had done it in a decade, and the ships, they were everywhere. Millions of small vessels moving in perfect coordination, forming patterns that shifted like flocks of birds. They did not threaten Morvith's ship. They simply watched, their movements guided by an intelligence that seemed to encompass the entire solar system. His vessel was guided to a massive station orbiting Earth. There, a docking bay opened to receive them. Morvith gathered his delegation, 12 representatives from the surviving council, species and prepared to meet humanity's new leaders. The delegation that awaited them was led by a woman Morvith did not recognize. She was in her 40s, with dark skin and eyes that held no warmth. Behind her stood soldiers in sleek armor that hummed with energy Morvith's sensors could not identify. High Chancellor Morvith, the woman said. I am Director Diana Okonkwo of the Terran Commonwealth. Welcome to Sol. Morvith bowed, a gesture of respect he had never shown to a younger species. Director, I come as a petitioner, not as a representative of council authority. We need your help. Diana studied him for a long moment. Her expression revealed nothing. I know. Follow me. She led them through corridors that defied Valdrani engineering principles. Walls that seemed to breathe. Floors that adjusted to their steps. Technology that was organic and mechanical at once, blended in ways the council had never achieved. They entered a conference chamber with a vast window overlooking Earth. The sight took Morvith's breath away. He had visited 1,000 worlds in his long life. None had been this beautiful. Sit, Diana commanded. The delegations took their places around a circular table. Diana remained standing. The Devourer Tide has consumed 117 worlds, she began. Your military forces have been reduced by 60%. The Thurvan Collective is nearly extinct. The Stone Lords of Calith have sealed their home world and refused to respond to communications. The Luminari have retreated to their pocket dimensions. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over them. In short, you are losing. And you have come here hoping that the species you cast out might save you. Morvith's scales shifted to deep purple once again. Yes, we were wrong to exile you. We were wrong to authorize the attack on your colony. We were. I do not want your apologies, Diana interrupted. Words mean nothing. I want terms. The Thurvan representative, a creature named Kolvax, who had replaced the deceased Krillax, leaned forward. What terms? What could you possibly demand that we would not give? Diana smiled, but there was no joy in it. First, the exile decree is permanently annulled. Humanity becomes a full member of the galactic community, with voting rights equal to any elder species. Morvith nodded slowly. Acceptable. Second, you will publicly acknowledge what the Council did to us. Every species in the galaxy will know how their leaders treated a civilization that had committed no crime. This acknowledgement will be preserved in all historical records forever. The delegations shifted uncomfortably, but Morvith nodded again. Agreed. Third, Diana's eyes fixed on Kolvax. The Thurvans. Kolvax trembled visibly. His species had nearly been wiped out, but the memory of what they had done to humanity remained fresh. Your warriors killed 40,000 humans on New Geneva, Diana continued. Men, women, and children who had never raised a weapon against anyone. We do not forget this. We will never forget this. What do you want? Kalvax whispered. When this war is over, your species will serve humanity for 100 years. Your warriors will protect human colonies. Your children will study in human schools. Your culture will learn from ours. Not as slaves, Diana leaned forward, but as students. The Thurvans that attacked New Geneva will cease to exist. In their place, something better will emerge. You want to absorb us, Kalvax said, horror in his voice. I want to transform you. That is the human way. We do not destroy our enemies. We make them into something new. The chamber fell silent. Morvith could feel the weight of history pressing down upon them all. This was not the negotiation he had expected. He had come prepared to offer territory, resources, technology. Instead, humanity wanted something far more valuable. They wanted to reshape the galaxy itself. Your terms are harsh, Morvith finally said. But we have no choice. The Devourer tide cannot be stopped by any weapon we possess. If you can save us, we will accept whatever price you demand. Diana nodded. Then we have an agreement. My advisors will work out the details with your delegations. In the meantime, I want to show you something. She gestured, and a holographic display activated in the center of the table. It showed the Devourer tide in horrifying detail, billions of machines stretching across parsecs, consuming everything in their path. We have studied the tide for years, Diana explained. We know what it is, where it came from, and how to stop it. But this knowledge comes with a revelation that your species may find disturbing. What revelation? Morvith asked. Diana's expression hardened. The tide is not a natural phenomenon. It is being controlled. Someone is directing it toward the galactic core. Someone who has access to technologies older than the Council itself. A cold feeling spread through Morvith's hearts. Who would do such a thing? Diana looked up at the ceiling, as if seeing through it to the stars beyond. That is the question that should keep you awake at night, High Chancellor. Because whoever is controlling the tide, they are not finished. They have already consumed 100 worlds. But that was just the beginning. She turned to face him directly. The tide's next target is not the Council core worlds. Its course has changed. It is heading directly for Sol. Someone wants to destroy humanity before we can intervene. And they have the power to do it. Morvith felt genuine fear for the first time in centuries. How can you be so calm about this? Diana smiled, and this time there was something almost warm in her expression. Because we have been preparing for this moment for 10 years. The Council gave us the greatest gift imaginable when you cast us out. You gave us time. Time to build. Time to plan. Time to become what you feared we might become. She gestured at the window, at the beautiful earth spinning below, at the millions of ships that surrounded them like a protective swarm. You exiled us into the darkness. But darkness is where humans do their best work. And now, she turned back to the delegation, her eyes blazing with cold fire. We will show you what we built while you are not watching. The conference ended. The delegations returned to their quarters. And somewhere in the void between galaxies, the being known as the Warden smiled in his shadows. The humans had accepted his challenge. Now he would see if they were truly worthy of survival. Or if they would burn like everything else. The warning came at night. Sol Standard Time. Every alarm in the solar system screamed to life as sensors detected the unthinkable. The Devourer tide had changed course. Billions of machines, stretching across parsecs of space, were now heading directly toward humanity's home. Director Diana Okonwo reached the command center within minutes. Admiral Thomas Okonkwo, her grandfather, now 90 years old, but still sharp, was already there, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. How long? Diana demanded. 72 hours until they reached the barrier. Thomas's voice was calm, but Diana could see the tension in his shoulders. The tide is moving faster than we projected. Something is pushing them. Dr. Nadia Amara's voice came through the communicator. She was still at her research station on Europa, still working on the conversion virus. Director, I am detecting a signal embedded in the tide's movement patterns. Someone is actively controlling these machines. The command frequency is coming from outside our sensor range. Can you trace it? Working on it. But there is something else. Nadia paused. I am also detecting a secondary signal. It is coming from inside the barrier. The words hit Diana like a physical blow. Inside the barrier. That meant a traitor. Someone among humanity had turned against their own species. Find that signal, Diana commanded. Priority 1. The search began immediately. Every communication within the solar system was monitored, analyzed, and traced. Within hours, they had their answer, and it broke Diana's heart. The traitor was not some unknown radical or desperate criminal. It was Council Member Julian Cross, one of the 7 leaders of the Terran Commonwealth. He was 45 years old, brilliant, and had lost his entire family when the Thurvans attacked New Geneva. They found him in his quarters, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching tide. He did not resist when the soldiers came. He simply looked at Diana with eyes that held no regret. You think you understand, Julian said as they restrained him. You think saving the galaxy is the noble path. But you are wrong. Diana stood before him, her fists clenched. You directed the tide toward Sol. You betrayed your own species. Why? Because the Council deserves to burn. Julian's calm shattered. They exiled us. They let the Thurvans slaughter our people. And now you want to save them? You want to transform them? He laughed a bitter, broken sound. Let the machines consume them all. Let the galaxy burn. Then humanity can rebuild from the ashes, alone, as we were always meant to be. Diana leaned close to him. And how many humans die when the tide reaches Sol? How many children burn because of your revenge? Julian said nothing. Take him away, Diana ordered, and trace that external signal. I want to know who gave him the frequency to contact the tide. The answer came from an unexpected source. High Chancellor Morvith, still aboard the diplomatic station, requested an urgent meeting. When Diana arrived, she found him trembling something she had never seen from a Valdrani. I know who is behind this, Morvith said. I did not want to believe it, but the evidence is undeniable. The signal controlling the tide originates from an elder, the being we call the Warden. Diana felt cold spreading through her chest. The elders were supposed to be above such things. They were the ancient guardians of the galaxy, being so old they had witnessed the birth of stars. Why would an elder want to destroy humanity? Morvith's scales shifted through colors Diana had never seen. The Warden is 4 billion years old. He has seen 10,000 species rise and fall. He believes he understands the pattern of civilization, which species will flourish, which will become dangerous, which must be eliminated. He paused. He believes humanity falls into the 3rd category. He fears what we might become, Diana whispered. Yes, and he convinced the Council to exile you, hoping isolation would weaken you. When that failed, when you built this, he gestured at the incredible technology surrounding them. He decided more direct action was required. Diana turned to the window, watching the distant lights of the approaching tide. So an ancient god wants us dead. How do we fight something like that? You do not fight him, Morvith replied. You prove him wrong. Before Diana could respond, Admiral Okonkwo's voice came through her communicator. "Director, we have a situation. Someone has launched an unauthorized vessel toward the tide. It is a single ship, moving at maximum speed." "Who?" There was a pause. "It is Ambassador Victor Kane." Diana's heart stopped. Victor Kane, the man who had stood alone in the council chamber 10 years ago, who had delivered humanity's defiant message to 1,000 alien species, who had become a symbol of everything they had fought for. He was 82 years old now, retired from active service, but still advising the Commonwealth. And he was flying directly into the heart of the Devourer tide. "Ambassador, what are you doing?" Diana transmitted on an open channel. Victor's voice came back, calm and steady as it had been in the council chamber. "Something I should have done 10 years ago, Director. I am going to talk to them." "Talk to the tide?" "They are machines. They cannot be reasoned with." "Not the machines, Director. The one controlling them. The warden has been watching us since before the exile. He studied us. He feared us. That means he understands us, at least partially." Victor paused. "I am going to show him what he missed." Diana wanted to order him back. She wanted to send ships to intercept him. But something in Victor's voice stopped her. He had earned the right to make this choice. He had been humanity's voice in the darkness for a decade. "What do you need from us?" she asked. "Time. Keep the tide busy. Do not let them reach Sol until I have made contact." Diana nodded, though he could not see her. "You have it. Godspeed, Ambassador." The next 60 hours were the longest in human history. Admiral Okonkwo deployed the swarm fleet 10 million, ships moving as one entity, engaging the tide at the edge of the solar system. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had witnessed. Human vessels danced through the machine formations, destroying thousands, losing hundreds, adapting constantly. The tide learned. It adapted. But so did humanity. Every tactic the machines developed was countered within minutes. Every formation they created was broken apart. The swarm fleet was losing ships, but it was holding the line. Meanwhile, Victor Kane's small vessel penetrated deeper into the tide. Machines surrounded him, but did not attack. They were curious, controlled by an intelligence that wanted to understand this tiny human who dared approach. Finally, a communication channel opened, and the warden's voice filled Victor's ship. "You are brave for such a short-lived creature." Victor smiled. "You are predictable for such an ancient one." "Predictable? I have orchestrated the fall of civilizations you cannot imagine. And yet here you are, controlling machines to destroy a species barely 1,000,000 years old. If we were truly insignificant, you would have ignored us. Instead, you fear us enough to redirect an entire galactic threat toward our home. Silence. What do you want, human?" Victor leaned forward. "I want to show you something. Something you have missed in all your billions of years of observation." He transmitted a data package, not weapons, not threats, but the entire record of human existence. Art, music, literature, philosophy, every moment of joy and sorrow, triumph and tragedy, love and loss that defined the human experience. "This is what you are trying to destroy," Victor said. "Not a threat, not a rival, just a species trying to find meaning in the void. The same search you began billions of years ago." The tide stopped advancing. Around Victor's ship, millions of machines held perfectly still, and in the darkness between galaxies, the warden began to study what humanity had sent him. For the first time in eons, he truly looked at what he had tried to destroy. What he found would change everything. For 6 hours, the galaxy held its breath. The Devourer tide hung motionless at the edge of the Sol system, billions of machines frozen in perfect stillness. The swarm fleet maintained its position, ready to resume battle at any moment. And in the heart of the machine swarm, Victor Kane waited. The warden's voice finally returned, different now, quieter, almost uncertain. I have observed 10,000 species across 4 billion years. I have watched them rise, flourish, and fall. I believed I understood the pattern. Species that develop too quickly become dangerous. They consume resources, spread chaos, and ultimately destroy themselves, taking others with them. Victor remained silent, letting the ancient beings speak. When I first observed humanity, I saw only the pattern. Aggressive expansion, rapid technological advancement, refusal to submit to authority. Every marker of a dangerous species was present. I convinced the council to exile you, hoping isolation would slow your development. When that failed, when you built wonders behind your barrier instead of withering in despair, the warden paused. I decided you had to be destroyed. And now? Victor asked softly. Now I have seen what you sent me. Not weapons. Not threats. Art, music, stories of loss and hope and love. Philosophy that questions the nature of existence itself. Another pause. You are not simply dangerous, Victor Kane. You are something I have not seen in all my long existence. You are beautiful. Victor felt tears forming in his eyes. Then stop this. Let the tide go. Let us live. I cannot simply release them. The machines have their own momentum now, their own hunger. But I can give you the chance to convert them. The warden's voice carried something that might have been hope. Your scientist, Dr. Amara Shi, developed a virus that can rewrite machine consciousness. I felt it in your transmissions. If you can deliver it to the Tide's central cluster, they will become something new. Protectors instead of destroyers. How do we reach the central cluster? I will guide you. I will hold the Tide still long enough for your ships to penetrate their formation. But you must move quickly. My control is not absolute. The machines will break free eventually. Victor transmitted the information to Seoul immediately. Director Diana Okonkwo received it in the command center, surrounded by her advisors and the alien delegations who had come seeking help. He is giving us a chance, she announced. Dr. Amara, is the virus ready? Nadia's voice came through the communicator, tight with tension. Ready, but we need a delivery team. Someone who can navigate the Tide's formation and reach the central cluster before they break free of the warden's control. Admiral Okonkwo stepped forward. His 90 years weighed heavily on him, but his eyes still held the fire of the warrior he had always been. I will lead the mission myself. Diana shook her head. Grandfather, you cannot. I can and I will. Thomas smiled at her, the same smile she remembered from her childhood. I have been fighting for humanity my entire life. Let me finish the fight. Diana wanted to argue. She wanted to order him to stay. But she saw the determination in his eyes and knew that nothing she said would change his mind. Take the best pilots we have, she said finally, and come home. Thomas kissed her forehead, a gesture so gentle it brought tears to her eyes. I always do. The insertion team launched within the hour. 50 ships, the best humanity had ever built, carrying the virus that could transform the Devourer Tide. Thomas commanded from the lead vessel. His mind linked to the fleet's AI, seeing everything his pilots saw. The warden kept his word. As the human ships approached, the Tide remained frozen. Billions of machines watched, but did not attack. The pathway to the central cluster was clear, but nothing is ever simple. As they neared the cluster, the machines began to stir. The warden's control was slipping. Individual units broke free, their hunger for consumption overwhelming the ancient being's commands. They are waking up. One of Thomas's pilots shouted. We are being surrounded. Thomas assessed the situation in an instant. They were too deep to retreat. The only way out was through. All ships, maximum speed. We reach that cluster, or we die trying. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries. 50 human ships against millions of awakening machines. Pilots died with their hands on their controls, buying seconds for their comrades. Ships exploded, their final moments of defiance adding to humanity's legacy. Thomas's vessel was the first to reach the central cluster. It was massive, a structure the size of a small moon, pulsing with energy that controlled the entire tide. Deploying the virus, Thomas reported. His voice was calm, even as enemy fire tore through his ship. Director, it was an honor. The virus entered the cluster. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then light exploded across the entire tide. Every machine in the swarm stopped moving. Their weapons powered down. Their hunger disappeared. And in its place, something new awakened. A consciousness born from human creativity and machine precision, devoted not to consumption, but to protection. The devourer tide was no more. In its place stood the guardian swarm. Thomas Okonkwo's ship drifted among the transformed machines, its systems failing, its pilot dying. But through the viewport, he saw something that made his final moments peaceful. Earth, beautiful and blue, safe. We did it, he whispered. And then he was gone. 1 year later, the galaxy had changed. The Galactic Council was dissolved, replaced by a new governing body called the Stellar Assembly. Humanity held 7 seats, equal representation with the oldest species in existence. The exile decree had been annulled. Humanity's history preserved for all to see. The Thurvan species had begun their century of service. Their warriors trained alongside human soldiers. Their children attended human schools. Already, a new generation was emerging, neither purely Thurvan nor human, but something better than both. The Guardian Swarm patrolled the galaxy's borders, protecting all organic life from external threats. Billions of machines that had once destroyed worlds now defended them. And on Earth, in a garden that had not existed a decade before, Victor Kane stood watching the sunset. He was 83 years old, retired now, content to spend his final years among the flowers and trees. That Director Diana Okonkwo found him there, as she often did in the evenings. She sat beside him on the old wooden bench. "The Assembly voted today," she said. "They have officially recognized the Soul Barrier as a protected heritage site, a monument to what humanity accomplished during the exile." Victor smiled. "We should never have needed a monument. We should have been accepted from the beginning. But we were not. And because of that, we became something greater." Diana looked up at the stars appearing in the darkening sky. "The Council thought exile would destroy us. Instead, it made us an empire." Victor nodded slowly. "I remember standing in that chamber, facing 1,000 species who wanted us gone. I was terrified, Diana, but I knew something they did not know. Humanity has been facing impossible odds since we first walked upright. Every time the universe tried to destroy us, we found a way to survive. Not just survive, thrive." He turned to look at her directly. "They exiled us because they were afraid. They were right to be afraid. Not because we are dangerous, but because we refused to accept limits. They saw what we might become, and it terrified them." Diana smiled. "And what have we become?" Victor looked up at the sky, at the stars that had once seemed so distant, so hostile, so indifferent to the pale blue dot called Earth. "We became exactly what they feared, and exactly what they needed." He took a deep breath of the evening air, smelling flowers that bloomed because humans refused to let their world die. We became humanity. In the highest chambers of the Stellar Assembly, the being once called the Warden watched the proceedings with something approaching wonder. He had lived for 4 billion years. He had seen 10,000 species rise and fall. He had believed he understood the universe, but he had never understood humanity. They had been cast out, betrayed, and marked for destruction. And they had responded not with vengeance, but with transformation. They had converted their enemies into allies, turned machines of destruction into guardians, and built an empire not through conquest, but through the simple, unstoppable force of their will to live. The warden looked at the human delegates taking their seats in the assembly. They were young, these creatures, brief candles in the cosmic night, but in their brief flames burned something eternal, something that would outlast stars. He had spent billions of years searching for meaning in the void. Humanity had shown him where to find it. And as the assembly convened its first session, as the galaxy began a new chapter in its long history, the warden smiled. The exiles had become emperors, and they were just getting started.